Renfield, blaming innocent victims.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, where I talk about vampires, werewolves, and other supernatural creatures. I don't talk about new movies very often, but a lot of people have asked me about the new Renfield movie featuring Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult, so I made this video. I've been a Nick Cage fan for a long time, and I also like Nicholas Hoult in Fury Road as well as his role in Warm Bodies, a movie about a zombie in a post-apocalyptic world who falls in love with a human. I've seen a lot of people jokingly say that Renfield is his long-awaited return to the undead. Nicholas Hoult actually played Nick Cage's son in the 2005 movie Weatherman, so this isn't their first film together. The cast seems really well put together. These actors can do intense acting, but don't take themselves too seriously, and I think that's exactly what a vampire movie like this needs. Also, William Ragsdale, who plays the elderly priest in the trailer, is known for playing Charlie Brewster in the Fright Night films. Before I talk more about Renfield, I want to tell you about the Vampire World book series, which is also today's sponsor. I listen to audiobooks all the time, and I'm always looking for new ones. The Vampire World series follows Alex, one of the few survivors left after a vampire outbreak left the world desolate. The humans that are left live on an airship that constantly moves to stay in the safety of the sun, but they must venture into the cities to gather supplies, and things can get pretty tense. If you're interested in the Vampire World, you can get all 6 books on Audible and Amazon/Kindle. They are also part of Audible Premium and Kindle Unlimited, so if you have those services, then you can get the book for free. I will have the links to the book in the description below. And thanks so much to the Vampire World series for sponsoring the video.
But this modern world is a dangerous place.
Renfield is directed by Chris McKay, who has also directed the Lego Batman movie, The Tomorrow War, some episodes of Robot Chicken, and more. He doesn't have an extremely long list of feature films under his belt, but there's some really quality ones in there. Nicolas Cage actually has been in one other vampire film, Vampire's Kiss from 1988. The movie is probably better known now for its memes than the actual film, as it didn't receive great reviews from critics. Something I thought was kinda crazy is Nicolas Cage's uncle is Francis Ford Coppola. You know, the guy who directed Bram Stoker's Dracula? The studio actually wanted Cage to play Jonathan Harker instead of Keanu Reeves, so Cage was almost in a Dracula movie before. I wonder what the 1992 film would have been like with Cage. He honestly is a great choice for the role, but it was actually his uncle Coppola who didn't want to work with Cage, because he apparently hijacked the scenes with his acting choices on a previous film they had worked on together, called Peggy Sue Got Married. Cage has wanted to play a few characters since the beginning of his career: Superman, Captain Nemo, and Dracula. Cage was even involved in a few Dracula films that never got made. Cage is a producer as well as an actor, and the first movie ever produced by Cage was Shadow of the Vampire from the year 2000. The film was received well and has become a classic in the genre. It's a horror drama adapted from Nosferatu. Cage said that his love for Christopher Lee is the reason that he makes horror movies. So you can see Cage has had a long history with Dracula in vampire movies, and it's pretty cool that him getting to play Dracula is the end of a career-long journey for him. Sorry about the Nick Cage rant, but I thought it was pretty interesting and kind of the end of an era for him getting to finally play Dracula. Of course, I want to talk about the character Renfield. A question a lot of people probably had when they seen the movie trailer was, who is Renfield?
My boss? He's different.
Renfield is a character that first appeared in Bram Stoker's 1897 novel, Dracula. He is Dracula's most loyal servant, helping him in his plan to turn Mina Harker into a vampire. In return, Dracula provides him with insects to eat and the promise of immortality. Renfield is a patient at an asylum because he suffers from delusions. The doctor diagnosed him as a zoophagous maniac, or carnivorous madman, because he eats small insects and animals to absorb their life force. By doing this, it will allow him to live forever. In the book, Renfield himself says that Dracula would send him the insects that he would consume: flies, death's head moth. Then he started feeding flies to spiders, then feeding those spiders to birds. He wanted to feed the birds to a cat, but his request was denied, so he ate the birds. His thought was that this process would result in him getting more life force. Dracula is in fact the one sending him the insects. The original Dracula could control all kinds of animals, so he promised Renfield an endless supply of insects and rats in return for his servitude. Renfield actually has a change of heart and tries to save Mina Harker. He even stands toe-to-toe with Dracula, but is thrown to the ground and badly injured. Lucky for him, a Van Helsing shows up just in time and performs emergency surgery to save him. Unfortunately, after some events, Dracula goes back to Renfield to finish the job. When the vampire hunters find Renfield's body, they describe him having a broken neck plus a bruised and crushed in face. Dracula must have been pretty angry that his most loyal servant betrayed him. This is a description of Renfield by the doctor in the 1897 novel. R.M. Renfield, age 59, sanguine temperament, great physical strength, morbidly excitable, periods of gloom, ending in some fixed idea, which I cannot make out. The doctor said that he has great physical strength, and Renfield himself thinks that he can live forever by eating insects, but it's important to remember that Renfield was never turned into a vampire. In some adaptations of the story, Renfield's character is expanded upon and his backstory is explored. For example, in the 1931 film adaptation of Dracula, Renfield is portrayed as a real estate agent who travels to the castle and is twisted by the Count. In the 1992 film Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, Renfield is portrayed as a lawyer sent by landowners to help Count Dracula in purchasing an estate in London. He actually escapes the castle, unlike Harker, but no one knows what happened to him. Only that he returned completely insane, eating bugs and worms and speaking of the Master. In an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer called Buffy vs. Dracula, Xander is affected by Dracula's spell, which leads him to devouring insects and spiders. He also calls Dracula Master and obeys his orders. In the 2014 film Dracula Untold, there is a character who refers to the Count as Master, and is the only one who still wants to serve him after it's discovered that he is cursed. I couldn't find a name for this character, but I'm guessing that he would have been revealed to be Renfield. You can see that Renfield is a character that's been attached to Dracula at the hip since his creation and has become a famous character in his own right among vampires. He has appeared in at least a dozen films spanning almost a century from what I could find. He has been depicted in a variety of ways throughout the years, but his role as a servant to Count Dracula and a tragic figure remains consistent. His character adds depth to the story of Dracula.
Some call me the Dark One, others the Lord of Death.
Now let's talk about the trailer for the actual film. The insect eating is in full swing. They seem to activate some kind of powers as his eyes glow after eating a spider. Renfield eats the spider right before a confrontation and shows he still has increased strength like in the original novel, but seems quite proficient at fighting. He says Dracula gave him this power, and in return he tends to the needs of the Count. So this power was given to him by Dracula, so it literally could just be an extension of Dracula's power. This probably means that Dracula could also take away this power at any time. Why did Renfield start serving the Count this time? And has he gained long life from eating insects? He does say this modern world is dangerous, implying that he isn't from this modern world. It's possible that he could be centuries old. He doesn't seem to be a vampire because he can walk in the sun and he has no fangs, although he might have the strength and agility of one. We don't see Renfield feed on anyone or show any vampiric qualities other than maybe pale skin. He seems to gather people and blood for Dracula, and he can communicate with Renfield telepathically. We see that he's obviously trying to escape Dracula, because in his words, he wants his life back. But Dracula won't let him go so easily. Renfield alludes that Dracula is not at his full power yet. That's why he must continue to bring his master the blood that he needs. Dracula communicates with Renfield telepathically, telling him what people he wants to feed on. Nuns, a school bus full of kids, whatever. Something must have happened to Dracula that made him lose his power, like maybe being staked or wounded in some way. The few brief moments that we do see him, he seems to have some kind of wounds on his face or something, maybe like he was burned. I wonder if this movie will connect to another Dracula movie or the original novel in any way, like a continuation after one of his defeats. The design of Dracula himself looks pretty good. I like the gothic theme with the outfit, hat, rings, and the cane. And what about the fangs? Some people want vampires to have 2 fangs, period. And I understand that, but I think the sharp teeth really add something, and he does still have the 2 larger traditional fangs. There's one shot in the trailer where you can see a person at a focus who I think is Dracula, but in this shot, his hand looks different, and the same with his face. So he might be capable of taking a more demonic visage like the Bram Stoker's Dracula. It looks like Dracula is staying safe in some kind of abandoned hospital or asylum, which would be a fitting place for Renfield. There's also a group of people with dog-like masks trying to find someone, possibly Renfield, but most likely Dracula. Maybe they have something to do with him not being at full power, but that's just a guess. But my bigger question about these guys is, are they werewolves? This is a Universal movie, like the original 1931 Dracula, and this film is kind of a result of the failure of the Dark Universe, which was supposed to be Universal's monster version of the Marvel Universe. Most people know by now it failed after the 2017 Mummy movie was a flop, which is a shame because a lot of people, including me, wanted to see the story of Dracula Untold continue. Although if the Dark Universe hadn't been stopped, we might have never gotten the Invisible Man from 2020 or this Renfield movie. I'm kinda over connected universes at this point and would rather just get a good standalone film.
In return, I tend to...
This seems like a movie that's had a lot of thought and care put into it, and it also has a great team behind it. I have my fingers crossed and I really want to see Nick Cage's portrayal of Dracula, but we'll have to wait a few months to find out how that goes. Definitely let me know what you guys think of Renfield. Are you excited for it? Scared? I want it to succeed, but I won't get my hopes too high. Then if it's good, I'll be surprised. And if not, then no big deal. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and subscribe if you haven't. It helps out a lot and I really appreciate it. An extra thanks to my channel members Roderick, Steven556, Owen Wildish, Joseph Roman, and Awesome Pea Shooter. That's a great name, by the way. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.